All right, this is Jimmy Campbell, Tape to Broadcast, 5150 interview series of Bulldozer Magazine. This is really a fucking fantastic night for me because we're back at the Boulevard in East Los Angeles, or Boyle Heights, whatever the fuck the actual demographic is. And this is also a nice reality check for individuals like myself who think that they know it all. As most of you know, I boast proudly that I've been around for over 30, 35 years covering the LA underground scene, and I would think I was pretty proficient. About a couple of weeks ago, I went to go see these gentlemen without me even doing it deliberately. I went to go see a band called Iconoclast. And I came across a band called Apocalypse. Now, before I get into this with these guys, this is a good example of how real, true underground music thrives and exists. To do this without making any money, I don't think none of us here look like we're in the Trump category. And to be dealing with the criminalization of music, the whole expansion of how the scene has gone, where now there's lawyers and markets and demographics and units. We bring it all back today with the old school. This is Apocalypse. Please introduce yourselves.
Christ, vocals.
My name is Rich, guitar.
John, guitar.
Now, I've been told you've been around since my era, the 80s, the early 80s. When did this band actually start?
1984 is when it all began for us.
I really feel like a dick.
Yeah.
1984?
Yeah, we were influenced from bands, from peace punk bands from that era that were ADS, Body Count, and Final Conflict. And that's what made us start our band, besides Crucifix.
What part of the city are you from?
We're actually from Walnut, which is east of LA. But back in the day, I mean, still, you still had to travel. So we were always finding ourselves in Orange County, which is where we found John, or we met John. Long Beach, LA. It was, if you were around back then, you knew you had to drive. There was no, you couldn't get around it. And so we thought we were just from everywhere, because that's where punk was. You just followed the bands, you followed the shows.
This is going to be a great conversation, and I'm going to exclude you because this is for me. You remember how music was then. You remember how not only were we dealing with the economic situation at that time under Reagan, before Rodney King with the cops, the fact that this was not cool. Now you fucking guys look cool. Young chicks here, you could bang them. Back in our day, this was not cool. We were ridiculed in school, ridiculed by our parents, ridiculed by society. And at the same time, we were the ones that had the voice of oppression, man. We were the ones that were talking and speaking against the injustices, not only of America, but at the time, Central America, the Middle East, and so forth, through this punk music. My question to you now, since you guys are back and since you relate, I all relate to each and one of you because we are from the same era and the same mentality. What happened to punk? Where was the voices during Desert Shield, Desert Storm? Where was the voices during the invasion of Iraq? When did punk become fashionable? And how do you feel being back now and being looked upon like, oh yeah, you're just on the bandwagon when you've been around for decades? Who would like to answer that first?
Let's try Johnny.
I don't know if I have an answer to that one. I don't have an answer to that.
I think social media has really made a big impact in the scene now. I mean, information is disseminated so easily and so quickly, as well as fashion, looks, attitudes, and ideas. So I think that's definitely a big part of it. Back then, when we were around in the early to mid 80s, fanzines was all you could ever read about and find out where shows were, find out when bands were touring, and that wasn't even instantaneous. You'd have to wait for Flipside or Maximum Rock and Roll or whatever fanzine was coming out at the time. So I think the internet age, technology is what helped push punk rock into the level that it is now, where money's being made and where fashion is being a bit more accessible. But back then, it was a different story.
But do you feel, there's nothing wrong with evolving, but do you feel that because of the fact that things are more accessible now and technology is out there now where things are being dictated to you and being told a certain way, that there is no voice of subversion?
Well, first of all, in the 90s, I think pop punk became popular. There was no real, I think everyone was so complacent. You know, the Reagan era was over. And I think that's what happened in the 90s. I think all the peace punk bands were gone by then. I mean, you have the somewhat the local ones, Resist and Exist or Armistice, but pretty much nobody was really speaking out, and that's why I think. Yeah, and that's why I think it died in the 90s. And I think it's coming back because of social media. But are they angry anymore? Probably not. Probably not angry.
Let me ask you this, because it seems that we're all from the same era, the same age. Are you angry now, and is this why you're back? Or are you... I had a great conversation with an established musician who I said it's a tragedy that you're still holding the flag 4 decades later. Are you guys back because, in a sense, the example of what is real needs to be shown now in this day and age?
Well,
Why is Apocalypse back?
well, as part of the speaking about the anger thing, me, my brother, and maybe a few other scenesters like Jay Lee back in the day, we were like the few minorities of the punk rock, the Asians. So, we got the double-edged sword. And then there was a bunch of suicidals and skinheads and Caucasians, the HB punk rockers. So our anger was also a big part of that, being alienated, not as a punk rocker, but as a minority. And we came from an area just north of Orange County where it was exclusively Caucasian. It was tough being a punk rocker. It did make us angry. It did make us want to try to prove something. Our heroes were like Christian Hosoi, Sothera from Crucifix. The few Asians that were in the scene in the early to mid 80s, that's who we looked up to. As far as us being angry now, we're older men now. I'm going to be 50 in just a couple of years. As far as the anger now, it's a different sort of anger. It's an anger for my children now, my family, and where this country is going, and the things that they're going to have to face now. The political climate, the Republican political climate. These are the kind of things that anger me now, as well as being overtaxed and paying mortgages and things like adult things. But as to a point, yes, Apocalypse, we're angry. We're still reflective of our age anger.
And nothing. And it's funny because it's all the same shit. It's still here. So it's just
frightening. It's evolved.
Yes.
What was predicted has come through fruition.
Yes. And what's funny too is when you see all this anti-police, man, we've been talking about that shit for years, man. And it's weird now to see that shit is like coming to light.
But come on, if we had fucking cell phones back then, we'd be millionaires.
Big time.
Look, I still got a lump from my head from the Olympic days.
Yeah, oh yeah, hell yeah.
From LAPD.
Oh yeah. So and he's right. I mean, our anger is just it morphed into these adult issues. I mean, we're not kids anymore, obviously. So we're dealing with what's happening with our kids and how it's affecting us now. I mean, but it is also weird that there's still that racism and there's still that homophobia.
A lot of those issues are still there. They're still there, but some of them have changed. Just like the big one is the police, the police issue, and it's ironic that, I guess not ironic, but I guess it's the reason why you wrote those lyrics for the new song, Police Farce, because it applies to that same subject, but in a different way nowadays.